Some of the stories, a lot of people talk to me and say, how do you deal with all that you see, and how do you not get discouraged? Isn't it incredibly discouraging? And some of the things that I tell people are, yeah, it is discouraging if you look at the whole picture. But what I try to do is look at the person that's sitting in front of you right now. And I encourage people to do that. If you're looking at just the person who's in front of you and you're concentrating on just that person, you can make a difference in that person's life. It's not because you'll take away the trauma that they've gone through. It's not because you will help them out by building them a new home or anything that you can do in that moment, but you can listen to their stories. A very interesting thing I was told when I was first there was that grief is a luxury. And in Haiti, people don't have that luxury, especially after the earthquake when 300,000 people died and over 1 million people were homeless. Who's going to offer you the help that you get when you're grieving? There aren't neighbors to come over and bring you food so you don't have to cook, and there isn't somebody to watch your kids while you cry or you rest. You may have lost your spouse and 3 of your children, and you have 2 children remaining, and you need to find a way to get them shelter for tonight and food for tonight and water for tonight. And so you can't take time to grieve for the loss of your husband or your other children. You just have to move forward and find safety for those that have survived. And so he told me that, for most Haitians, they just kind of had to move on. And they weren't allowed to take time out to grieve. And so one of the things that we did in our clinic was to offer trauma counseling after every medical consultation. But also during the medical consultations, I encouraged people to sit down and just ask people, what happened when you were on the day of the earthquake? Where were you? And who did you lose? And how were you affected? Because they hadn't had that chance to tell those stories. And you could see that initially they weren't sure they were going to tell you, but then once they started, man, it just poured out of them because they were so in need of telling people how hurt they were and how saddened they were with what happened. And so we were able to offer the services of just listening and holding somebody's hand and letting them know that we cared, which was a great service that we were able to offer. It wasn't just the medical care that we were giving, but we were also offering emotional and spiritual care as well. One of the stories that I think touched me the most that I'll share with you over the time that I was in Haiti was of a young woman who, when I was doing one of the triage moments where I had to go through a long line of people and find the patients that were the most ill, find the patients that had to be seen that day. And I met this young woman who was about 20 years old, and she was carrying what looked like a newborn baby. And because I knew that the babies tended to need more care and they were more susceptible to disease, hadn't yet had their vaccines, especially in the climate following the earthquake, I went ahead and made sure she was going to be seen that day. And I finished going through the whole line of people and gave out about 500 tickets for the day, and went back and sat in my little spot, 2 chairs, and 1 chair for me and 1 chair for a patient, and began doing consultations again. And during that time, it was maybe half an hour or an hour after that, this woman came, and she was the patient I was going to see next, her baby. And so we started talking, and I noticed on the consultation card that she had filled out that the baby's age was listed as 5 months. But it was very, very small, and in fact the weight was only 8 pounds. And so I was sure there was a mistake about the age of the baby, and so I asked the mother again how old this baby was, and she told me 5 months old. So then I started thinking about, well, maybe what else could be wrong if the baby's this small at 5 months? And I thought, well, maybe it was premature. So I asked the mom if the baby had been premature, and she assured me no, that it had been at least 9 months. And then I thought, well, maybe it's got a digestive disorder and it's not digesting food well. And she told me, no, it's not that. The baby really used to be big, was born at 8 pounds, as a matter of fact. And so looking at this baby who was not making eye contact and wasn't engaging in anybody, wasn't reaching out for anything, just lay limp, basically, in his mother's arms, was heartbreaking for me. I asked the mother when was the last time that you had fed this baby milk? And she said, a couple weeks ago. And I said, well, how long is a couple of weeks ago? And she said, at least 6 weeks. And probably was much longer than 6 weeks, but that was all she would admit to. And so then I started talking to her about what she was feeding the baby. And imagine, this was at that point about a month and a half after the earthquake. So for 6 weeks following the earthquake, or maybe even 2 months after the earthquake, where was she going to find formula? She wasn't breastfeeding. I had asked her why she wasn't breastfeeding. She said a doctor told her milk was sour. She had been breastfeeding initially, and then the baby made a face one day when she was breastfeeding. And so in Haiti, they were told that when the baby makes a face like that, that means he doesn't like your milk and it's sour. And so she stopped breastfeeding. And so because of that, she was unable to nourish this baby. She did tell me that she'd been giving the baby carrot juice and mashed bananas when she could find them, but mostly just carrot juice. I guess it was very cheap. And but even still, she had to pay for it. And I asked her how she was paying for that, and she made a comment that she didn't say anything. She just kind of stared at the ground, embarrassed. And when I talked to her about, how could she get food? She said she couldn't stand in line. She said she couldn't hold this baby in her arms and stand in line in the sun all day waiting for USAID relief workers to give her a bag of rice. And she just couldn't keep the baby out there that long. And so, we talked about, we talked to all of the Americans who were doing consultations, and we said one of the important things is not to cry with your patient. See, they need to see hope. They need to see that their life can be a little bit better. That maybe their circumstances around them cannot, but their hope for the future, and they need to trust in that. And that was part of the spiritual relief we were able to offer people. But beyond that, just to listen to their stories. And so she had let me know that her husband had died, and that her entire family had died, and she was left alone with this baby living in a tent camp. It was really difficult not to cry with her. My heart was breaking watching her and knowing what she had gone through. And I can't even imagine what it would be like for a mother with a 5-month-old baby and knowing you can't feed your baby. And trying to do what you can to scrounge around for any food to give that child, but watching them just wither away every day. And so I ran off to the pharmacy and found out that a team the week before had been able to give us a lot of formula. And so I was able to get her a case of formula. And as I told her story to the other folks in the pharmacy, they threw in granola bars and power bars and Gatorade and anything they could think of to give to this woman to be able to take home with her so she would have food herself. As I brought the box back to her, I passed a pastor, and I asked this pastor to sit and pray with her after we were done, and she agreed to do that. And then I gave the food to the woman. But I realized she couldn't carry the baby and the box of food. And so I asked her if she had come with anybody, and she said no, and asked her if there was a way that she could get the box of food and the baby home. And she said she would try. But she got up very quickly and ran back to the line of people who hadn't gotten tickets that day. And she made a bargain with one woman, and she bartered with this woman. The woman agreed to carry the baby back to the tent if she could get 1 can of formula. It was that important to her. And so she found somebody who would carry the baby, and then she carried the box of food. And I never saw her again. I have no idea if the baby survived. I don't know if this woman survived. And that's pretty much the nature of the work that I do. But you have to trust that you've done all you can in this moment. One thing that I try to tell people who come and work with me, whether they're nurses or doctors or students, is that you do what you can with what you've got in this moment. And I think it was originally said by Winston Churchill. But you do all that you can right now. You can lose your moment that you have to do any good if you're worried about all the things that you wish you had. If I had this, I could do more. If I had these skills, I could do more. And so you lose your moments. And so if you take the moment that you have and understand what it is you have to give, whether it's your skills or the supplies that you've brought, and sometimes it's just holding somebody's hand and listening to their story and being an ear. Those things are what will change the world. All the money in the world, building the best schools, building the best hospitals, don't change the world. It's the relationships we build with people, and that means taking time and sitting and acknowledging that person in that moment right in front of you. And I would really encourage you. I know as nurses, there's so much work to be done, especially if you're a floor nurse in a hospital. Man, your life can be crazy. But it's those relationships you build that will change your life and the lives of people around you. And so take time to get to know people. And take time to hear their stories and know where they're coming from. And don't assume that a grouchy patient or a cranky person is just that way. They may have really had some tough times and may be that way for a reason. And they just maybe need somebody to let them know that life could be better tomorrow. So we worked with several teams. Teams came in from all different agencies. Samaritan's Purse sent us teams, and American Baptist Churches sent us teams. The Cooperative Baptists sent us teams. We also had teams from different universities. University of Massachusetts was able to send teams down on a regular basis. Brown University, Yale University. So we had a lot of cooperation with universities and churches in the United States to get the work done. One of the things we found is that a lot of teams wanted to work with us because we were getting it done, they said. We were able to get into the tent camps and to work. But as of the 1st of May, we were no longer able to get back in. We were facing the problems that many other teams faced, and that the Haitian government was no longer allowing volunteers to come in, especially large relief efforts like we were doing. They said we were hurting their economy. And so they said no longer would they allow in free medical supplies and free medical care. And so as of the beginning of May, we had to stop taking in medical trips, medical teams to Haiti to offer relief work. And also we had to stop taking in free food. I will be heading back to Haiti the 1st of December and spending about a week there trying to find a community that is really interested in partnering with us to work and continue the medical care. We're also working on microeconomic projects that we can do. I think they're doing some micro loans in one of the communities that we're going to go into, and potentially we may find a way to be able to use our skills and also benefit the community more than just us pouring in supplies and people to their community. But they'll come up with a project that'll be long-lasting and life-changing for everybody. And so that's the goal in the December trip. I'd like to encourage anybody who has any interest in traveling overseas. It'll change your view of the world. It will change your outlook on how you see people and patients and where they come from. You should take a trip. Make an effort, a concerted effort to understand the communities that you serve and understand the diversity and accept the diversity of the communities that you serve. It will only help you be a better practitioner. And I also would encourage you that if you're looking at becoming a nurse practitioner, you should. The abilities and the skills that you learn are so much. Your chances, your abilities to be able to do more with that degree. It's not so much. Oftentimes, at least for me, it wasn't that I learned so many new things, but I began to understand why I was doing what I already knew how to do. And beyond that, I also found that there was an independence and there was a respect that was gained by the medical community even for what I was doing when I was at the level of a nurse practitioner. So I would really encourage folks to do that. I guess that's probably about it that I have to say. And I would just really, again, if you have any questions, please contact the nursing department and find out how you can help. If they need to ask me, they can contact me and we can find out how to bring students down to work with me. And maybe potentially you guys can start your own trips. But don't forget about the ability as a nurse is not just to offer medical care or medical relief, but you're also able to provide lots of things that involve social services and listening to people and hearing them and offering that kind of solace that other people in other professions aren't able to do. And that's such a blessing to offer in this world.